Hi everyone, my name's Linds Williams and I'm going to be talking to you this evening about the Korean Grim Reaper, known as the Jeoseung Saja, in this talk Beyond the Scythe. I've sort of come at this topic from the perspective of, let's say, an enthusiastic amateur. Really like Korean dramas. I've been watching them more or less since the lockdown, first lockdown, and drawn in particular to supernatural K-drama, and then more specifically to anything involving Reapers. And you might see why a bit later on. As for me, I am an English language teacher by day, and then the rest of the time I'm into sort of my Korean stuff, so K-dramas, K-pop, geology and things like that. And I have done, I think it's 3 talks before now. So one with Jen about the Bone Wars, one about the geological Gothic, and then one about K-pop idol Taemin. I don't think I've quite got a playlist yet, but I'm working on it. So let's get going. So the first thing I need to say to you is this is all about death. There's no getting away from that with the Jeoseung Saja. And particularly when we get to a drama called Tomorrow, it's basically all about suicide. So if either of these things are something you really don't want to expose yourself to, then please step away, look after yourself first. I'll give you another warning before tomorrow in case you decide that that's that's the one bit that you want to miss out. So the Grim Reaper essentially is what we usually see in K-dramas as the translation, excuse me, for the Jeoseung Saja. And this is the, I suppose, the Western equivalent of the same figure. But actually they look very different from the Grim Reaper. These days, basically, they're more likely to turn up in a 3-piece suit, and they have questions. So I'm going to take you through sort of an introduction to the Jeoseung Saja with a bit of the folklore and the cultural context. Talk a little bit about the evolution from that kind of folkloric figure into modern K-dramas. Then I'm going to show you 3 examples of Korean dramas featuring Reapers, Goblin, Black, and Tomorrow. And then finally, we'll just put it all together with a little cultural reflection about why the Jeoseung Saja is, I suppose, a useful figure for making dramas in Korea. Excuse me. So if I say Grim Reaper, I suppose for a lot of people, particularly in the West, the figure on the lower right-hand side of the screen there, with his sort of long robe hiding skeletal figure, holding a scythe, that might be the first thing you think of. And then if you you might be a fan of manga or anime, and in that case, Luke from Death Note might spring to mind. So he's a Shinigami. Although he's actually not a representative Shinigami, they're usually actually quite sort of neutral and almost, well, even friendly characters. But our Jeoseung Saja is a different entity altogether. So there's a little bit of Korean for you, if anybody can read that. So Jeoseung Saja. This translates as afterlife messenger. And the figure is a psychopomp. So if one is seen, it's a harbinger of death. They're associated with sort of places like hospitals, graveyards, sites of awful accidents, that kind of thing. So if you see one, death is coming. But then, as well as being a harbinger of death, they're also a guide, and they're tasked with leading departed souls to the afterlife. And I say they because there's not just one of them. So the Grim Reaper in Western folklore is if you like, a single figure, whereas the Jeoseung Saja is an organization. There's loads of them, and it's really bureaucratic. So they have rules and regulations, they have procedures that they have to do. It is their kind of solemn duty to carry out this guiding of souls. And it's a sort of peculiarly Korean creation, this figure. Their boss is one of the gods of the underworld, Yomna, who is, if you like, responsible for judging souls and deciding whether they reincarnate or whether they go to heaven or to hell. Jeoseung Saja is typically dressed in a particular way. So the hanbok is sorry about the rustling, that's a cat. The hanbok is a black robe, sort of traditional long robe with many layers, sort of crosses across the chest, and often has quite sort of voluminous sleeves. And it comes down to about sort of mid-calf length. Sometimes it has a belt, sometimes you can't see the belt because there's a jacket over the top. And then there's also the gap, which is the hat, which is this rather beautiful construction of bamboo and horsehair. And if you ever look up on YouTube how to make one of these things, they're astonishing. And actually the people who make them are considered sort of intangible, cultural, what's the word? Not objects. But yes, you know what I mean. So this hat is kind of it's a big part of their identity. It's their link to the underworld, to the divine realm. It protects their identity. If you see a person in black, sort of very pale person, wearing one of these hats, it's probably a Jeoseung Saja. In some iterations of the Jeoseung Saja, the hat confers invisibility, but we'll come back to that a bit later. So they also carry a chokpachi, which is a red book or scroll, and on this is their the list of souls. So if you like, it's their work schedule for the day. They go and they've got their list of who's died or who's about to die, and they go and make sure that they escort them to the afterlife. The images on the screen there, bottom right, we have an image from Arang and the Magistrate. So this is 2012, which is not that long ago, but this was kind of the standard way of seeing Jeoseung Saja at the time. And then we have 10 years later, again, a very traditional look, but you'll actually see a bit later on that this character also rocks up in a suit. So the Jeoseung Saja has existed for, it appears, a couple of thousand years. So before Buddhism arrived in Korea in, I think, the 7th century, the main belief system was a shamanic system. It still exists today. It's sort of animist. It believes that objects have spirits. And so the Jeoseung Saja was as a guide. So it was to guide the souls with death as a transition, and they would sort of walk souls from through that transition. Buddhism came along, and the Jeoseung Saja acquired the idea of a sort of a structured system of the afterlife. So before that, there don't appear to have been all of the sort of rules and regulations, and then along comes Buddhism, and we end up with this much more sort of hierarchical, everybody has their role and there are rules to follow, that kind of idea. Later on, again, Confucianism. This is still really important in a lot of, sort of Korean ways of thinking. It's to do with moral conduct. So the Jeoseung Saja delivers the soul to be judged according to its deeds in life. And it's worth saying that the Jeoseung Saja and Korean mythology in general is a really rich source material for Korean media, also for literature. So you'll see sort of films, there's a lot of art, games, and it's kind of become almost like, you know, if you have a supernatural K-drama, it's got to have somewhere in it a Jeoseung Saja, whether it's a central character or a peripheral one. And this type of stories where supernatural beings enter the human world are known in Korea as imuldan, imuldam with an M at the end. And these are stories where, so a being, whether it's a Jeoseung Saja or a goblin or a ghost or one of the other types of entities, enters the human world basically as a reminder that other beings are a constant present in our lives. So they may be responsible for life's hardships and pleasures and that kind of thing. So they're always around, and it's a big part of sort of the background of a lot of Korean storytelling. So what's the change then? So from this traditional view of the Jeoseung Saja in his hanbok and gat, what do they look like in more modern representations? So from being sort of quite neutral characters with a duty to fulfill and sort of not stepping outside of that path, we move to the situation where Jeoseung Saja have become central characters. So the three dramas I'm going to look at today, I have the main Reaper from each one on this slide. So on the left, this is the eponymous Black, with in the middle, this is Gurion. She's the sort of the leader of the crisis management team, we'll talk about later. And on the right hand side, we've got Grim Reaper from Goblin. So these are all key characters. They have complex backstories. So Reapers are often described as people who had taken their own lives or committed some awful crime, and so becoming a Reaper is sort of their atonement for their transgressions. But vitally, most of them don't remember their life as a human. And in fact, this kind of lack of a past life almost always features as part of their development in the drama. So they're finding out who they were, what they did, and coming to terms with that. One of the I suppose most attractive things about the modern Jeoseung Saja is the relatable personalities. These are not cheery people. They're generally grumpy. Think Eeyore, that kind of thing. And they're a bit baffled by humanity. Often they can't remember what it was like to be human, so they find human behavior just generally a bit confusing. They're often given romantic interests. So, you know, just when you've got a person who doesn't remember being human or what it's like to be human, and then they sort of start discovering their own past life and there's some romantic interest in there, or sort of through the course of their duties, they meet somebody who becomes a romantic interest. So this is often a source of comedy, but for the storylines, it's quite often to do with conflict and dilemmas and sort of figuring out who they are and what they want. We've also got a breaking of gender norms. So the central picture there is Kim Hee-sun in Tomorrow. So Jeoseung Saja traditionally is male. So bureaucrats were male, and they wore the hat because they had passed a civil service exam, something like that. And so to have a female Reaper is actually a very modern thing. And Kim Hee-sun does a smashing job, and has a really interesting kind of development arc as well with one of the other Reapers. We also have sort of a moral ambiguity about them. So often they're kind of amoral. They just follow their duty. They know what they've got to do. They turn up to collect a soul and guide it to the afterlife. But then this kind of neutral position is quite, in some cases, it's sort of prone to distraction. And so when they sort of start going off on their own path, then they often ends up being sort of the road to some greater dilemma. And they're not supposed to intervene in human lives. They're just not supposed to get involved. Falling in love with a human, absolutely not on. And so this is where the drama comes from. Quick point on the visual transformation. So on the left side, we have the sort of boss Reaper from Arang and the Magistrate. So 2012, so not long ago, but this was the kind of traditional form of the Jeoseung Saja. And on the right-hand side, we have Lee Dong-wook, who's the Grim Reaper in the drama Goblin. And this is kind of the modern iconic version of the Grim Reaper, the Jeoseung Saja. I don't use the word iconic lightly. This has been kind of a really key influence, I suppose, on how Jeoseung Saja are depicted now, certainly in their appearance, with sort of a suit, a long black coat, and then some kind of hat. In this case, it's a sort of slightly misshapen fedora. But yeah, it's still, it's a recognizable uniform, but it's an updated version. Sorry. Okay, so on to the first of our examples. So this is the K-drama Goblin, also known as Guardian, the Lonely and Great God. The Korean name for it, Dokkabi, is rendered as Goblin into English, but this kind of doesn't necessarily translate very well. So I think for me, certainly, when I think Goblin, I'm thinking possibly sort of green-skinned, creepy looking dude with ears and a nose and up to no good. It's fair to say that at no point during this drama does the Goblin look like that. And so for international audiences, it was given this other name, Guardian, the Lonely and Great God. It is actually most commonly known as Goblin, though. So the story of Goblin is over 16 episodes, and this is from 2016. We have this immortal goblin who's looking for his human bride, who's the only one that can break his curse and allow him to die and find peace. He became a goblin it's like 900 years ago as a punishment for the many deaths that he caused as a military general. And sort of since then, he's been living fairly quietly and occasionally faking his own death and moving around so that people don't realize that it's the same guy all the time. And at one point he returns to Korea, comes back to Seoul, and his path crosses with the Grim Reaper when the latter, for reasons, rents the house that actually belongs to Goblin. And so they end up as housemates. Hilarity ensues. It's genuinely incredibly funny, seeing the two actors together. Aside from that, so the Goblin is seeking his bride, so she turns up pretty quickly. And then the Grim Reaper also has a romantic arc, and he meets a woman called Sunny and begins a romance with her. And so through this, he begins to regain his memories of who he was in his human life and what he did. So let me just play the trailer for you. Thanks, Sam. So I love trailers like that because they're just completely bananas and over the top. So that there was the Goblin and the Goblin Bride. She would be really annoying if he wasn't so funny. So there is does balance itself out. You may have noticed there was no Grim Reaper in there. This is a travesty, because honestly, when people talk about Goblin, it's the relationship between Goblin and the Grim Reaper that most people remember. So I'm going to show you a little clip. This is sort of their first encounter from episode 1. It's really short. And you've got the Goblin returning home and the Grim Reaper in his tea house. So the tea house is sort of an important sort of stage in sort of a soul's journey to the afterlife. So he brings the deceased person to the tea house and he serves them the special tea that makes them forget their life. And then he sends them off through the door to the afterlife. So we often get them talking about their life, their regrets, and that kind of thing. And we learn that forgetting is important so that you can be reincarnated without baggage, although there are certain exceptions to this where he does not offer tea because somebody's done something so awful that their punishment is to remember it for eternity. Okay, let me play this clip for you. So that pretty much sets up the relationship from the start. Yeah, they really don't like each other, and then they end up being mates. And it's a smashing pairing on screen. They are just really funny together. So on this slide, we've got some images from the drama. So bottom left, we have the Reaper on the left with a soul on the right, and he's giving them their tea. Top left, we have the Goblin on the left, and then Goblin Bride in the middle, Reaper on the right. And then top right, we have on the left the woman Sunny, who is here meeting the Reaper at the beginning of their relationship, which again is very funny. So this this drama kind of has, if you like, the kind of well-worn themes of any romance drama, I suppose. And the fact that we've got immortal characters in the Goblin and the Grim Reaper sort of, I suppose, foregrounds a whole redemption thing. So we've got them questions of things like, what would you give up for love? That kind of thing. It's the Goblin has to choose whether he's going to die, be at peace, and perhaps being reincarnated, or will he stay with his bride? The Reaper sort of recovers his memory and then has to deal with all the things that he'd done in his past life before he's allowed to die and to reincarnate. Excuse me. And then the free will. So they don't have a choice about the punishment that they've received, but they do have to accept that at some point the punishment is finished. And so that's quite often a big thing, that they have to be persuaded, look, you've done your time, mate, you can move on now. And yeah, so it's worth just re-emphasizing, I suppose, that the importance of the afterlife and reincarnation in Korean tradition. So living the right way and following the rules is important, and so that's shown up in this as well. Okay, let's look at the next drama. So this drama is titled Black, which is the name of the main character. It's 18 episodes, and it finished airing December 2017. And it follows a Grim Reaper. So his designation is Grim Reaper number 444. yes, that's number 4. If you know, so for example, in Korean and in Japanese, the number 4, the sound is also the sound of the word for death. So we've got Grim Reaper, number, death, death, death. He is like their star player. And he has to track down his working partner, his Reaper partner, who is a new Reaper and who has basically run off to try and go back to his life as a human. So Reaper 444 has to find him and bring him back again. To do this, he sort of inhabits the body of a police detective who's died in the line of duty. And so as he's looking for the rogue Reaper, he's also working as the detective and solving a series of cold case murders. He meets a woman who can see how people will die and teams up with her. And then inevitably feelings happen. And he sort of falls in love with her, and sort of part of his arc, I suppose, is that he as a Reaper, he doesn't remember being human, or he has never been human. Suddenly he's experiencing human emotions, and it makes him question everything. And so things about, like, trying to save lives, falling in love with this woman, and the dilemmas that those bring up about what he's going to do, whether he's going to go back to being a Reaper or whether he's going to try and stay. So let me play this trailer for you. I swear that they all use the same background music in these in these trailers. As far as I remember, that music does not feature in Black the K-drama at all, but fine. Okay, so we've got a couple of stills from the show here. So top left, on the left-hand side, we have Black with Harim, who is the woman who can see how people are going to die, and his sort of romantic interest. On the bottom right, we have 3 Grim Reapers, 3 Jeoseung Saja. Black is the one on the right-hand side. In the middle, there's another one who's sort of another kind of modern interpretation of the appearance, so still wearing black, but much more kind of street. And then the chap on the left with his hanbok and his gat is the much more traditional appearance. And so this show kind of has, various versions depending on the Reaper themselves as to how they want to appear. So our themes here, sort of justice, human emotions, and the old favorite, forbidden love. So justice is all about, in this case, the Reaper is questioning the fairness of actually both systems that he's working in. So his job as a Jeoseung Saja, and then his job as a police officer as well. He sees the sort of the suffering of the living, and he begins to see that actually his neutral role as a Jeoseung Saja, he's sort of perpetuating decisions made by those in power that actually he realizes now are quite unfair. And in his role as a police officer, then he begins to sort of see the flaws in the policing system. So there's corruptions and cover-ups and things like that. So it's dealing with fairness of the system in both the sort of temporal and supernatural ways. We've also got human emotions. So he either was never a human or doesn't remember being a human. And so he's having to deal with all of these feelings. And it's your standard stuff, love, loss, and betrayal, that kind of thing. And so these feelings was sort of activated, if you like, by his relationship with Harim. He starts to question things, but also to make decisions which might be seen as being irrational, but in the context, perfectly understandable. And he also has to sort of confront his own prejudices and kind of understand the impact of his own actions on other people. And we also have the forbidden love thing, which so popular in K-dramas. So this relationship between Black and Harim, it's breaking the rules. Jeoseung Saja are not allowed to intervene in human affairs at all, and falling in love with a human is absolutely not on. So we have our questions of some sacrifice and destiny, and can love transcend the boundaries of death, etc., etc. So yeah, it has quite a dark tone. It's a bit darker than Goblin in tone. It does have humorous moments. They don't work as well as the ones in Goblin do, but the actual story itself is really, really good. This was actually the first Grim Reaper K-drama that I watched, and yeah, really, really enjoyed it. The only difficulty with it is it's difficult to find now to watch, but we might come back to that a bit later. Right, so we're going to go on now to our third example. So this is a 2022 drama called Tomorrow, so 16 episodes, and it finished airing May 2022. There's a huge content warning for this, so if suicide is a trigger for you, then please step away for a while, maybe come back at the end. I will try to be as sensitive as I can, but I apologize in advance if I say something that isn't sensitive. So this show, it starts off with this young man who is really struggling to live up to sort of societal and familial pressures in Korea. He's trying to find a job, he's trying to be respectable, and it's just sort of an endless string of disappointments and job interviews that don't go well and all of this. But we are kind of convinced that he's a nice guy, and when he sees a man who's about to take his own life, he intervenes. He saves the man, but ends up in a coma himself, and he wakes up in the hospital room, standing next to his own body in the bed. And in the room is this woman with fabulous pink hair who offers him a 6-month contract with the Crisis Management Team, which is a group of Jeoseung Saja who are dedicated to preventing suicides. So this is a whole departure from the usual Jeoseung Saja way of doing things. Each episode goes into a story of a different individual who is contemplating taking their own life, and it shows the team sort of supporting them, offering them hope, reasons to live. And then in the background, we have an overall series arc where we learn about the backgrounds of the other Reapers, and yeah, see them kind of untangle their past lives. So let me show you the trailer for this. Thanks, Sam. So Tomorrow, here we have some more pictures. So on the left, this is the publicity shot for the series. Sorry about the quality. The 3 Reapers on the left are the Crisis Management Team, and the guy on the right is kind of the hot shot, best Grim Reaper in the office. Nobody likes him. So there's entertainment to be had there, particularly as you can see in the middle stills there, we have said a hotshot Reaper and our crisis management team leader, Gurion, untangling their past lives and realizing that actually they knew each other before. On the top right, we have Rowan, who plays the young man in the crisis management team, and a woman who here, she's wearing this sort of strange outfit with a big hat, and she's actually going around handing out health drinks around the office. But we quickly discover that actually she is God, essentially. She's the Jade Emperor. And so she has these sort of different roles. So, one, she's the mom or the grandma looking after everyone, but on the other hand, she can be a frankly scary lady in a sparkly dress with massive shoulders, as you may have seen at the end of the trailer there, sort of dispensing justice. And so, yeah, interesting character. So the themes of tomorrow, as you can see, mental health is the main one. So this is a show that is aired in the context of Korea having the 4th highest suicide rate in the world. It's the highest rate in the OECD. 2022, when this series was aired, more than half of deaths among people in their 20s was as a result of them taking their own lives. And it's the leading cause of death for people under 39. But actually older people as well can be quite vulnerable to this, because the social security system is quite poorly funded, and there's this sense that older people don't want to become a burden to their family, and so some may take their own life in order to avoid that. So the series sort of goes into different reasons why people might want to take their lives. So each story, each episode is a different person, and we find out all about their life and how they've come to the point they are now. So the series is sort of quite careful to acknowledge that mental health struggles are really, really difficult. And, it looks at depression and trauma and all these kind of things. And I suppose the point of airing such a series in Korea would be to try to break the stigma around mental health issues, and to encourage people to talk more openly. And I mean, while it does focus on preventing immediate suicide attempts, it does also contain sort of acknowledgement that actually it's an ongoing struggle, and that some people will need sort of ongoing support and that kind of thing. So the empathy comes from, in particular, this is shown up in the character of the young man, but it's all about understanding different people's points of view, I suppose. And so by exploring different people's struggles, we see these different perspectives, and how societal pressures, familial pressures, that kind of thing, can affect people. And then also quite explicitly talks about the value of life, giving people a second chance, showing them that there is hope. In every life has its value and deserves support. So it's quite a hopeful thing. And I think, yeah, you might find that quite cheesy, but actually I've watched this series once and I have never been able to watch it again. It was brilliant. It was amazing, but it was just so sad and so emotional. And there are certain episodes that I think I'll probably never watch again, because they were just so, intense. But yeah, really, really well done. And so that brings us back round to the cultural significance. So, why would you, as a program maker, why would you use the Jeoseung Saja to explore these themes sort of around death? Well, I suppose the Jeoseung Saja embodies a unique cultural perspective on mortality. So they are a neutral being representing sort of guidance, leading to sort of judgment, redemption, those kind of things. Their role, it sort of provides a familiar framework. So a Korean viewer would be familiar with the sort of historical and traditional figure of the Jeoseung Saja, and so knows what they're getting, if you like. And so this whole, so themes like the process of dying, transition to the afterlife, or whatever comes next, it's kind of the character is kind of a safe character, if you like. You trust them, you know what they're going to do. So the Grim Reaper in the West is rarely that nuanced. You don't tend to get much character development, whereas here we're seeing Jeoseung Saja with sort of complex and flawed characters, and much more relatable, and certainly fan favorites in a lot of cases. The Jeoseung Saja is uniquely Korean, so it's very specific to that culture, but then it also explores these universal topics. So, fears around death, curiosity about death, hope in life and the afterlife, that kind of thing. Their kind of neutral role means that they are quite an interesting starting point for exploring moral ambiguities, those kinds of things. And then as a program maker, this kind of blend of traditional Korean mythology with modern setting and modern storylines makes a really a rich narrative possible. So makes it really attractive for both Korean audiences and worldwide. A quick list here of some K-dramas featuring Jeoseung Saja. Some of them are main characters, some of them are peripheral. Most of these are, in fact, all of these, I think, are quite easily available on Netflix or Viki. Some of them may be on Prime. The poster to the left, this is the poster for The Uncanny Counter, which is quite strange, but actually really entertaining take on the Jeoseung Saja and the idea of sort of shepherding souls to the afterlife. Once you get past the tracksuits and the martial arts, it's actually really good fun. I know I'm not really selling it very well. And then the most recent one, Way Back Love, this year. I haven't actually finished watching that yet, and it's okay so far. It's okay. One of the main characters is a Jeoseung Saja, and he returns to his kind of old, his ex-girlfriend a week before she's going to pass away. So that is where the drama comes from. There you go. Thank you for your attention. What questions do you have? I do have a little bit of reading if anybody wants to do a screenshot. So just bits and pieces of background and discussions of different aspects of the Jeoseung Saja and Korean drama. There you go.